Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where we sit here and I regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something awesome happened. So, we return to our comparison of D&D 3.5 and Pathfinder's starter box, beginner adventures. Last time we talked about the Rescue the Baby Unicorn quest and how great and compact and flavorful that was to show you what D&D 3.5 was all about. And I have here the Pathfinder's Game Master Guide, which inside has a starting adventure called Black Fang's Dungeon. Now, how am I going to say this? I hate it. I hate Black Fang's Dungeon so much. The point of a tutorial area or a starting zone or whatever you like is to show players what can be done and then give them an example of each one. Now, it can be done good and it can be done poorly. My favorite example of a tutorial level is Mega Man X, because it shows you perfectly how to play the game without saying anything. And then at the other end of the scale is this, for me at least, because D&D did such a great job. It gave you a mission, rescue the baby unicorn, and you'll get money for it. And here's this short dungeon with a locked front door and a trap, a couple of guys to fight, a treasure chest or two. This is how keys and locks work, etc., etc. It was very concise, very, very good. You knew what you were doing the whole time, even if you were just learning the game. This mess is at the opposite end of the scale, and people say you can't really compare them because Black Fang's Dungeon was built for 4 people, not just for 1, and so it had to be bigger, longer, more complicated, but that doesn't mean it's good, because this, to me, actually breaks the cardinal rule of dungeon crawling, is that the dungeon itself doesn't make any sense. And I have lectured and I have talked and debated with so many different people that have DM'd or played D&D or know a lot about RPGs in general, and we constantly argue and talk about, a dungeon is not a dungeon. It's a place, whether it be a crypt or an old castle or the ruins of a fort or a sacred temple or a pyramid or whatever it happens to be. When it was built, whatever it was built for a certain purpose, so it had a certain layout with form and function to it. Because especially if it's built out of stone, stoneworking is time-consuming and expensive and takes lots of people to get it and get it right, especially if you're laying down traps and puzzles and things like that, magic. It's unbelievably expensive. So laying out a dungeon in a random pattern not only insults the people that, in character built it, but it insults your players because, they wander into, say, a crypt, and then they go through the whole thing and they go, where are all the people buried? This is a crypt. Or, where are all the plaques that say when they lived and when they died? There's no names, there's no offerings, there's no, what god did these people follow? People forget all these details and all these things because they just want to build a dungeon and have a spike trap and an ogre and God knows what else. And it's an insult to the craft, in my opinion. When you just throw a bunch of rooms together with, it's I'm going to put a trap there and a monster there and, a treasure chest way back in that corner. Okay, I'm done. No, that's not how you're supposed to do it. If you want to do something well, you build it as though it were brand new, furniture or sarcophaguses or traps or whatever, intact. And then when you want to turn it into a dungeon, then you break out the walls and you put spider webs up and fill it full of goblins, etc., etc. You have to build it new and then destroy it, and then it becomes a dungeon. whatever it was beforehand is open for logic and, common floor plans. So, I don't know. I could ramble about that for hours, and someday I'm sure I will, but Black Fang's dungeon is terrible. I hated it. I actually ran this during my basically going away party for the Gamers Guild when I was in college, which was a group of like 60 to 80 people that would get together every week and play Magic the Gathering and tabletop games and obscure board games and stuff like that. And they had a bunch of side rooms where people would play things like D&D or Pathfinder. And this was around the time that Pathfinder was just coming out. 4th edition was brand new and not impressing anybody that I knew of. And Pathfinder kind of came out alongside it, promising us that we could keep all of our 3.5 stuff and improve upon it, because Pathfinder was compatible with D&D 3.5. And we're like, oh yes, we can keep all our stuff and get more new stuff? Okay, we'll do it. So I bought the Pathfinder starter box, which came with, tiddlywinks, you could stand up, and character sheets and all the different things you would expect, little fold-out maps. And it came with a hero's guide and the DMG guide here that had an adventure and a bunch of magic items and ads for their other products and all kinds of stuff. It explained conditions and maps and all kinds of like monsters and other little things. But the main thing that it had was like a sit-and-play dungeon called Black Fang's Dungeon. Now, again, this was like my going away party, and I'll not lie to you, everybody else at this table learned to play D&D from me. So it was, again, like a going away party. Oh, it's like 3.5, let's try it out. Put Tony behind the screen, we'll see if it's any good. That's basically what happened. So we unfurled the map, and we got the tiddlywinks set up, and everybody picked a person to play as. You didn't have to roll any dice or make anything up. And I was like, okay, the map is on the inside cover, so you can kind of see what it looks like. And if you look, if you pause me or do whatever you want to do, the dungeon kind of sprawls and goes in multiple directions, which, again, these were all veteran D&D players, so they were used to this, but looking at this afterward, it feels like somebody took a bunch of darts and just like threw them at a wall of ideas, because none of the rooms go together. None of them do. It starts as a cave, and then it's a properly brick and mortar dungeon, and then there's an area with water that has no beginning and no drop point. It's got a magic fountain in it for no reason. It's got monsters that wouldn't live in proximity to each other. Anyway, I'm done bashing it. Let's start the adventure, and you'll kind of see why this is just a nonsense dungeon. That I have a giant shelf of Pathfinder stuff, and this is the one product I think that they failed at. And being that it's the beginner's box, that's a bad thing to pick to fail at out of your entire lineup of products. So I'm going to keep looking down because I've got the map in my lap, so you'll wonder why I keep looking down. So I can remember, because the ordering and the logic of this dungeon don't exist. So I have to remind myself what happens next, because there's not a chain, there's not a story here to be told through the dungeon itself. It's just nonsense while you try to find what you're looking for. So I sit behind the screen, and I've got this book, and I sit down, and I was like, okay, so the nearby village of Sandpoint has appointed you 4 heroes to go monster hunting. And they go, ooh, monster hunting, all right. Fairly simple, go kill X. And they go, what is it? And I go, well, whatever it is sweeping by the sheep herds in the dead of night, picking up sheep and like tearing them in half and like dropping them again. And they go, is it eating anything? And we go, no, not really. It must be too fuzzy for whatever it is. And they go, is it leaving tracks? No. But one of the sheep that got torn in half got this giant black fang sticking out of it, thusly Black Fang's dungeon. And, that's the only evidence that we have, and they take out this big black tooth and show it to him. It's like bigger than a shark's tooth, and it's curved and black and nasty. And I was like, this is awful. This is like a dragon or something fairly large for a group of level 1 party members. And they go, okay, so we gotta track it and we gotta kill it. And that's just, that's basically the adventure. Go kill X. And that's fine for showing people how to do stuff. Having a big boss at the end is kind of cool. And all the leavings and cut down tree limbs and different things like that lead them to a cave up in the hills, like far and away from the village. So as the crow flies, whatever this was would fly down over the village and over the sheep herds, grab something, eat a few bites, and then just tear it in half and drop it in the dead of night and then disappear again. So nobody knew what it was. They're already thinking dragon, because what else would it be? But we'll have to see. And they track it to this cave, and the whole front of it is covered with vines. But they can see tracks that go inside, and they kind of kneel and they check them, and they go, no, these aren't tracks from whatever this was. This is something else. They find that they are tiny, tiny, barefoot footprints. And they look at each other and they go, goblins. And of course, they kind of push the little vine curtain to one side, and who's right in the entryway but goblins? And there's only 2 of them, and 4 of our adventurers, so they run in and just like clonk the little bastards over the head. It's like, well, that was easy. And they go, well, I guess that solves that, and they dust their hands like they're going to turn around and leave. They go, well, let's plumb a little bit further. So they find a treasure chest with some money in it that's just sitting in the corner for no reason. There's a door, and this is a cave, and they find a mounted door straight away, and they go inside, and inside is a magic fountain. And they know it's magic because they can use detect magic. And they go, what does this do? And I go, to drink the waters is to flip a coin of fortune or misfortune upon yourselves. And I look into the book, and there's like, when you drink the water, there's 5 good things that happen and 5 bad things that happen. And you have to roll a d10 to see what it is. They're like, well, we're not going to touch that, are we? Because it's like giving the players a deck of many things. If you've got just as much chance for something bad to happen, they'd rather stay where they are. So they completely pass this magic fountain. It's glowing with like golden waters and sparkling with magic. Nope, we're not going to touch it. It's like, well, you can go further to the north, or you've got a door to your far right. And they go, we go for the door. And they open it. And inside is a wide room with a dais, and on the dais is a giant fist-sized ruby. And they go, ooh, and our rogue's like, mine, and dashes for it. And as soon as he sets foot on one of the tiles, it sets off a fire trap that knocks him on his ass, and he takes X amount of fire damage. He's like, oh, okay, maybe not. So there's a pair of statues shaped like dragons that shoot fire when you get too close to them at whatever angle, or if you step on the wrong tiles. And about 2/3 of the room is laced with trigger tiles. So there's no way to get close to the ruby without like flying or spider climbing or whatever. So our rogue decides that he's going to dash up the dais and just like tank the damage. And he burned all of his health potions, but he got that ruby. And a ruby the size of your fist would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but I think it said it was worth like 300 or something. And once he got up there, he like shoulder checked the statues to knock them both over. And it's like, this sounds really familiar now that I think about it. But he gets the ruby and he bags it. Yes, treasure. And they move on to the next room, which is covered with spider webs. And there's a treasure chest straight in the middle. And they go, oh, we checked the ceiling. And sure enough, there's a spider hanging out on the ceiling. And they go, we're going to shoot it with our crossbows. And they aim up and they shoot it right off the ceiling. I was like, this is what happens when you get a bunch of veterans together into a dungeon that telegraphs like this. So you see a room covered with spider webs? Yeah, there's going to be a giant spider. Yeah, it's hanging out on the ceiling. And it jumps down onto one of them and like bites them across the neck. Ah, I've got gangrene. I've got poison. And they basically surround it and like kick it to death, because who is it kidding? One spider versus 4 adventurers. And they get what's in the chest, and then they keep going around, and they come to another area that's like a big swath of water, like a small pond. And the passage goes on to one side, but across the pond they can see a small island with another treasure chest on it. And they go, oh, I bet there's something in the water. You know, it's like every room has like a hidden bad guy and a freaking chest with a reward in it. And I think our fighter or somebody wanders up to the water's edge like, well, we have to find out what it is. You know, I set foot in the water, and this crustacean creature immediately jumps out and like grabs him with its pincers and pulls him underwater. Ah! And pulls him down into the water. Now, here's something I would not have put in a starting adventure, because underwater combat is 3-dimensional and not easy to map. And this water is like 15 or 20 feet deep, so left and right are just as likely as up and down. Fighting this creature that's got like a plus 14 to grapple or whatever it is. So no, the level 1 fighter is not going to out-grapple this thing. Hell, even a monk wouldn't be able to out-grapple a plus 14. But he drags him under the water and starts like squeezing on him and trying to suffocate him. So everybody jumps into the water. You know, we pull our spears, we pull our swords to just like flambe this freaking lobster monster. It looked like a zerg while it was upright, but it was holding the fighter in like a big nasty claw hug. And they had to kill it before he ran out of air. And they all busted up out of the water. Oh, I couldn't hold my breath any longer. And they slopped themselves up onto the island. God, that was awful. And they open the chest, and inside is a Dragonbane's sword. And they go, a sword of Dragonsbane? Seriously? And I go, yeah, that's what it says. I didn't make this up. And I actually turned the thing and showed it to them. I was like, yeah, they're inside that chest is a sword +1 of Dragonsbane. So if you hit a dragon with this sword, it will take extra damage. You're like, well, damn, it just gave it away. So again, another flaw in this nonsense. And I go, you know, as you continue on through the passage, you can hear more goblins arguing in their filthy, slimy tongue further on in the passage. And there, once you round the bend, you find there are no less than 5 goblins standing, arguing over another treasure chest. And there is a leader among them, King Gobgob. Or he had an actual name. I just called him King Gobgob. But now this is a combat where there are more enemies than there are players, which is fine because it sets up a big skirmish. And, roll initiative, and, we pull our swords and we go at it. But they're goblins. Their challenge rating is like 1/3. So it's a large-scale skirmish for them to fight in. Plus, it showcases that, some, even if they're the same species, some goblins can be stronger than others because they're leaders, or they have magic weapons, or they have abilities to make the other goblins hit harder because they've got levels in Bard, etc., etc. So a complex combat for new players, but these are veteran players, so they know to shoot the guy that's in charge first. Because, goblins are small and the players are medium, so they can shoot over the crowd to knock this guy out first. And they take care of the goblins pretty darn quickly, and they get what's in that chest too. And it's mostly just like money and a couple of jewels, a couple of freaking potions, things like that. Nothing super exciting. And then, there's a wall that has a passage up beyond, so they've got to learn how to do climb checks. And they get up into this next area, and it's back to being a cave now, because it's gone like cave dungeon, as it sprawls around in different directions. And they find 3 or 4 coffins leaning up against the wall, which is weird, because usually you'd have like a coffin on its back or like a sarcophagus standing upright. But these are leaned, like they were moved there for some reason. And as soon as they get close enough, they see a little like altar with a green candle and a dagger and some money on it. And as soon as they grab the candle, all the coffins bust open. And, skeletons, ha! Why skeletons? Skeletons, shut up. It's in the book. like they're in this with me by now, and they can see this dungeon isn't trying to be anything. It's just trying to showcase, like, the game's features. So it's like our cleric could turn undead, or do smite per day with the paladin, or whatever it happens to be. But they're skeletons. They're built like twigs, so they ended up basically bull rushing into these guys and just exploding them because they're ancient and they're made of brittle bones. So who the hell are they kidding? And they ended up with like the sacrificial dagger and the weird green candle and a bunch more money. The starting dungeon here is not shy about giving them treasure, even if the treasure doesn't make any sense. There was money in, let's see, the entryway, in the spider nest, beyond the pond, with the goblins, with the skeletons, beyond the 2 fire statues. There's a little bit of money and treasure in almost every room, which, why? Why is too powerful a word for this dungeon, but we'll get to that. And they're like, okay, how are we doing? We chug a couple of potions, we bandage our heads and make sure we're doing okay, because by now they've fought, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 monsters in one session. For level 1 characters, 12 anything is a pretty big challenge, and they've still got to find Black Fang. By now they've surmised that it's a dragon. The dungeon gave us a dragonbane sword, a la Zelda. You found the magic item that's new and weird. I bet that's the boss's weakness. You never know when that might come in handy. Oh, wait, the boss is weak to this item. It's silly, Anyway, they go around the next corner, and they find themselves directly into a horde room. Now, I have to flip the page for this because it said something really silly. Yeah, Black Fang, which is the dragon, they turn the corner and enter a horde room, basically, and it's got like a skylight. So Black Fang has been coming in basically through the back door, and they came in through the obvious entrance. So listen to what it says about Black Fang in this book. It says, Black Fang is a very deadly foe. He can easily reduce players' hit points to below 0 with just a few attacks. You should be very careful when running this encounter. It is meant to showcase one of the more dangerous monsters in the game, not to kill all the players. If Black Fang knocks out half the players, consider having him flee the battle so that some might survive to fight another day. Note that this version of the dragon is weaker than the version found in the monster section of this book, so that it is not completely overwhelming. Should the players encounter Black Fang again sometime after they have gained a few levels, you should use the actual version of the dragon. I'm sorry, if I'm winning a fight, I don't run away. If 4 assholes break into my horde room and I knock out 2 of them, I don't turn tail and run. I kill the other 2. If he's got a dragon's bane sword and he's not good at using it, I'm going to rip his fucking head off and then go after his friends. So, this... And not only that, but he's like the final boss with no warning. So, at the end of this dungeon, after having fought like 12 other monsters at level 1, they throw a black dragon at you, and it's not even like a small one. He's I guess a large. What is he? I don't know, but he's like a powered down version. He's got long reach. He's got armor class of 21, good saves. His bite is a D10 plus 3. I mean, he's a dragon. Yes, he's gonna kick your ass. You don't fight dragons ever at level 1 unless they're like hatchlings that got left behind for some reason. And even then, those squirrely little bastards will eat your face. There's no reason ever to put a dragon at the end of a tutorial dungeon. Now, it goes about as well as you might expect. The fighter takes up the Dragon's Bane sword, runs in, rolls, the highest initiative, runs in, boom, hits the dragon as hard as he can. The dragon, in return, hits him with a melee attack and kills him in one hit. Just fucking rips his ass in half and throws the pieces to opposite ends of the room. Everybody else is like, oh shit! So they turn tail to run, and Black Fang chases them through the entire freaking dungeon because he's a big dragon, but he's small enough to get through all these passageways. So one by one, he tears them down until I think only the rogue was left, dodging behind columns and like trying to get off shots with his crossbow. But no, Black Fang freaking murdered the entire party with very little effort. And I thought, wow, this is the powered down version of a black dragon. And it's like, you don't use dragons lightly ever. Otherwise they become commonplace and players like, we're going to have dragon burgers tonight. No, you have to sell the fear, sell the power, sell the breath weapon, whatever it happens to be. I think we melted one of them with the acid breath, but no. Black Fang killed every single one of them, and that was the end of that adventure. And, even using the powered down stats and the Dragon's Bane sword and everything else in between, they lost, and dice, you might say, oh, that's not fair. Well, dice fall where they may, for better or for worse. So if the dragon rolls a 20, critical, confirm the critical, rolls maximum damage, what was it, a D10 plus 3, so times 2, 26 damage to the fighter. Yeah, he's going to get torn in half, and then he's going to eat the rest of you for dinner. So, not only did the dungeon make no damn sense, the final boss was so powerful, the entire party died. And it's like, pick something else, anything else. It could have been something big like a mountain tiger or a freaking panther or any number of things, like a small dinosaur or something. Anything for the level 1 party that just did a whole slew of other dungeon stuff, and has no idea what's ahead of them. They've burnt all their potions fighting a dozen other monsters, and then you drop a dragon on their heads? No! That is not how things work. So you see how unfair this is. Not only does the dungeon make no sense and give away the final boss with the Dragon Bane sword, it was just nothing. It was an amalgamation. Oh, there's a room with a ruby in it, but it's full of fire traps. Why? Who put it there? Why didn't they keep the ruby? Was it buried there? What about the guys in the coffins? Why were they there? Who were they? Were they nobles? Were they anything? Why were there 2 goblins up front and then 5 goblins in the back arguing with each other? Why didn't they all stick together? With giant spiders and giant crustaceans in this cave, clearly there are other denizens. You'd think they'd want to stick together because goblins by themselves are pretty weak. So did King Gobgob tell them to guard the door and then they got overwhelmed before they could scream? I don't know. Why was there a treasure chest in every room? Treasure chests are so lazy. I hate them so much. I mean, I get it. You've got to have like a place to keep your stuff if you're a bandit or if you're a king and you have a giant treasury, or a dragon, you've got a dragon's hoard, or if you need some way to transport money or objects, but I don't know. I've never really been like on board with treasure chests. They strike me as weird. Why not just a chest or a box, a wardrobe, a barrel, a crate? It could be any number of things that would fit the setting and make it make sense. But no, it's got to be a treasure chest. And just, you see how many different factors this thing had. It had goblins, giant spiders, dragons, skeletons, crustaceans. Half of it was a cave, half of it was a dungeon, part of it was a crypt, part of it was a lake, part of it was just a room with a ruby in it with a bunch of traps on it. It was like some 5-year-old just threw together like half a dozen rooms and then put a dragon at the end just to be an asshole. And then now compare that to the Save the Baby Unicorn quest. You know, the mayor says, the unicorn has been kidnapped, go get him. You know, here's this bandit lair. They lock the front door and they put traps in front of it. Okay, there's 2 guys in the first room, there's 1 guy in the second room, and you know, the baby unicorn is in the third room, you know, and there's 1 chest where they keep all their stuff and their money, and there's, you know, 1 locked door which you can negotiate in several ways, and there's, you know, the last room is full of like horse feed and other like care objects to take care of this baby unicorn. The whole place was perfect. It was succinct, short, it made sense, and you didn't really think about it because it was small. Everything went together, everything felt like it was supposed to be there. This nonsense didn't fly with me, and it didn't fly with any of my veterans either. And they were like, God, who designed that? And I go, Paizo. It's like, Jesus, everybody sitting at this table has made up better dungeons than that stupidity. It's like, I don't... And again, I have a giant shelf full of Pathfinder stuff that gives out all kinds of great advice about how to run games and monsters and traps and stuff, but woof, Black Fang's dungeon was terrible. Like, if you want to learn Pathfinder, don't get the starter box. Just get the core books and have somebody who's creative make a dungeon, because they're not going to do any worse than this bullcrap. So yeah, that was Black Fang's dungeon, the nonsense dungeon from the Pathfinder starter box. So while Pathfinder has pretty much trumped D&D 3.5 in every possible way, they screwed up with their starting dungeon. That D&D kicks the crap out of them in that department. So take that as you will. That was, I guess, a pair of episodes that went together. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, because I've played the starting adventure for D&D and the starting adventure for Pathfinder, and D&D's was 10 times better. So whatever knowledge or entertainment you can glean from that, I hope you had fun. So I will see you guys on the next D&D stories. Keep gaming. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like button for me. If you want to keep up with channel updates, check me out on Facebook. And if you're feeling especially generous, be sure to visit my Patreon. Keep gaming!